we need to show people that there's something new here. There's something different going on. This is a different kind of therapy for people with Parkinson, and the therapy is really to help strengthen relationships. And this is not about sex. This is about deepening connection. This is about intimacy.
Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Sonika Garcia.
And I'm Brad Davidson, and this is Breaking the Code,
a podcast series addressing misconceptions related to the discipline of behavioral science. We hope to arm you, our listeners, with the tools you need to make sense of behavioral science and to help you apply it to your work as communication extraordinaires. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Today we have a very special episode because we have a guest on, and you know how much we love our guests. So this episode is all about Parkinson's disease, Parkinson's Awareness Month. The month of April is Parkinson's Awareness Month, and I believe April 11th was National Parkinson's Awareness Day. But basically, it's a month dedicated to the importance of Parkinson's disease awareness, really educating everyone on the symptoms and more than, just what is the disease, but rather how is it really impacting the lives of, about 1 million Americans and then about 9 million people globally. So really just helping to bring awareness to recognize early signs that can lead to an earlier diagnosis, and just overall, how can we understand this disease to help people live a better life with Parkinson's? So because it is Parkinson's Awareness Month, we wanted to, have an episode that was dedicated to some really great work that we're doing in the space. For anyone who's not familiar with the disease, I know I definitely needed to do my research into what exactly it was. It's a progressive brain disorder. So it's a brain disorder that causes unintended or uncontrollable movements such as shaking, stiffness, and difficulty with balance and coordination. I know, everyone probably knows like Michael J. Fox. He's one of the more famous people that have Parkinson's and have done a lot of work to bring awareness to it. And as I mentioned, it's progressive. So it does, get worse over time. And it's hard. I mean, it's obviously hard on the patient. It's hard on their families. And I think that's sort of part of the conversation that we want to get into today. But with all of that being said, we have a guest on today. We've invited Howard Lenn. Howard Lenn is an executive creative director at Havas Health Plus agency, and he leads the creative team that works across a range of brands from pharma to biotech to health and just overall wellness. And at Health Plus, he focuses on engaging ideas and experiences that really bring humanity into health sciences, which we love and is a big part of what we talk about on the podcast. And he was a key part in spearheading this initiative called ParkinSex. It's a project that has gained amazing recognition, has done amazing work in the Parkinson's space. And I'm not going to get into it because I tend to just go on, but I really want to thank you, Howard, for being on, and would love to kick it over to you to kind of take us through what ParkinSex is.
All right. Well, thank you, Sonika and Brad, for inviting me on today. ParkinSex is an initiative that we co-created with the American Parkinson Disease Association, and it is about helping partners connect through intimacy, and we call it the Kama Sutra of Parkinson's. And ParkinSex, to describe what it is, it's a kit, and this kit has items to help people practice connection and a book with strategies for how to use these items to deepen their relationship and help them connect through intimacy.
That's really
Amazing.
interesting. Like practicing intimacy is a concept I want to get into later. So
Yeah.
like I'm going to put a pin in that one, but I like that phrase, practice intimacy.
Yeah.
Thank you. The APDA like that as well. And
What do they like? No time like the present.
No time like the present.
Howard.
Well, it comes naturally to humans, but at some point, how you perceived your relationship and the things that came naturally through those connections, maybe there are new ways that we need to connect when we have issues or disabilities or other things that we're dealing and managing with. And it's not always easy. And it does take some reconnecting and relearning the things that came naturally. And that takes practice. And so when something like a condition like Parkinson's, which neurological chronic conditions have one of the highest rates of separation of any of the diseases. And to help connect, sometimes that takes some effort and sometimes that takes some practice.
That's interesting. I'm reminded when Viagra launched, the launch platform was male performance, right? And even the name is like Vi and aggression and all that stuff. And, you know, it obviously did very well. I mean, I always point out that men are willing to kill and then drink endangered species to get an erection. So this drug was going to sell itself. But what was interesting was it really had a problem in long-term couples of like one and done scripts. And that's where Cialis came in and sort of took a much different approach, which is there's no point getting an erection if no one wants to like engage with you, as it were. And so for partners who had really had no sex or no penetrative sex for quite a while, to your point, the habit of intimacy was gone. Cialis really focused on reconnecting physically as a couple. And to this day, they still do. That whole like bathtub campaign, as cheesy as it is, as whatever we want to call it, it sort of understood the fundamental truth that you can't just think about one side of the equation when you talk about intimacy. You can when you talk about sex, right? But not intimacy. Intimacy is a sort of a give and a take. And that's where the two bathtubs sort of index long-term relationship. Who do you share a bathroom with? You know, and it's not a bed. Viagra almost always shows a bed. They're really showing more couples who share a bathroom, who are comfortable being naked around each other and sharing those spaces. And I think to me, Cialis, and even the name like Cialis would be a good perfume. You know, it's a much softer name.
Yes.
Right? Like, oh, what do you say? Oh, you smell lovely today. Thank you. I'm wearing Cialis. But I do think that there's something about that idea that intimacy is much harder to sell.
Yeah.
But it's a much more rewarding, long-lasting sales proposition. And I know this isn't about selling, but ParkinSex, we talked about the name a little bit. Like the name's almost a misnomer, but
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah. The name, you know, we're trying to get some attention.
Yeah.
We're trying to tell people who are community members of the Parkinson's community. We're working with the American Parkinson Disease Association. Yeah, you've spoken about stigma and shame and taboo, and this is definitely squarely, you know, in those spaces. But still, we need to show people that there's something new here. There's something different going on. This is a different kind of therapy for people with Parkinson, and the therapy is really to help strengthen relationships. And this is not about sex. This is about deepening connection. This is about intimacy, which is critical. We know that it not only has health benefits, it has quality of life benefits, and the intimacy is important for individuals, but it is also very important for the well-being of their relationship. And couples who are managing Parkinson's disease are busy managing Parkinson's disease. And ultimately, you know, we get into conversations about, you know, a caregiver and their partner that they're caring for. And it can take where that relationship started, that romance, that beginning, and it can leave that behind. And even though people really want to maintain that, and that is the joy in life.
That's really what I wanted to understand. And you touched on it, Brad, you know, shifting. It's not it's just about sex, even though it's called ParkinSex, it's really about intimacy. And just to kind of bring it back to something that we talk about a lot with disease versus illness, you know, I think I feel like sex and like the functionality of like, okay, like performing and being able to, and that sort of a thing is more of like, you know, related to the disease itself. And then the illness is more of like the impact on life. And it feels like intimacy is more of that, like that need and that thing that really improves the relationship. And I like that you guys, you know, kept it in that realm. I'm curious, Howard, you started to talk a little bit about the importance of co-creation with this project. And how did you land on intimacy? And like, was that something that you like gut checked with the community when you were thinking through like potential areas? I mean, I think everything starts with like, okay, what's the unmet need? How can we, provide something different? What can you walk us a little bit through that process, especially with a topic like this? I'm just so curious on like that whole process and how it went.
Yeah, I think, when we first started thinking about doing something with the American Parkinson Disease Association, and we were thinking about, their mission and how they are creating community and making community better, which really ties into kind of their mission for awareness, education, research, resources, and really building positive community to help people live better. Started thinking about what aspect of that can we impact. And one of the things that became clear as we started talking to people within the community is that the medical community is really focused on managing the symptoms, and organizations like the APDA are really focused on making life better. One of the facts that we hit upon, this idea that chronic neurological conditions have the highest rate of separation, started thinking about what is the relationship between partners who are managing a disease and how they may benefit from this, something that will help them not just build happiness in the larger community, but in their one-on-one community. And that was really the kind of the starting point for this.
I think that, that gets to something that Sanika mentioned it, but I just want to define it for people who haven't like listened to literally every podcast we put out, which is probably everyone listening right now who isn't related to me. But there's a distinction that they make in the social sciences sometimes, and I'm a big fan of talking about it, which is disease is what medicine is really focused on. And that is the pathophysiological process that we can measure. And it has signs and it has symptoms, and I can stop your tremors, or right, those sorts of things, right? Illness is the lived experience of having disease, and medicine has gotten progressively worse at dealing with that as we become more and more transactional. And in some ways, I had a friend, Garth Anderson, who used to say, good medicine makes for bad medical practice, right? The more I'm able to sort of address your symptoms, the less I need to talk to you about who you are and what I need to do for you. And the reality is, it's not just neurological conditions between partners. Things like having an ADHD child increases your rate of divorce by 30%. There's all sorts of stressors involved in things. And when you open the aperture on the lens and go, what am I really trying to treat here from a health perspective, not a disease perspective, but a human wholeness, thinking about ADHD as, say, a driver of divorce makes you think, I need to treat the family. I need to treat the family dynamic. And that was the first thing I thought when I saw ParkinSex, is like, this is actually addressing human wholeness, not just the car breaking down, like to use that metaphor, but like actually, like we're more than just machines. We are feeling, thinking creatures. Healthy and whole are related etymologically. Now, etymology, the history of words, doesn't necessarily mean that much, but in this case it does. Healthy means whole, and whole means healthy. And conceptually, you can't really be whole if a huge part of your life is missing. And that really gets to, I think, what I was very inspired by when I saw this. Now, to your point, I think Parkintimacy or Parkins intimacy doesn't really roll off the tongue the way ParkinSex does. But I think in some ways calling it ParkinSex, as much as it attracts attention, it sort of undersells what this is about, because it's really Parkinson connections, intimacy, relationships, health, wholeness, and the idea that people deserve intimacy regardless of their physical status or mental status. That to me is very inspiring.
Yeah, a relationship is a very personal journey, and ParkinSex is meant to be a journey. And the way that the program is written, it starts with very accessible and simple ways to help couples connect based on meeting very specific emotional and physical needs of partners who are managing Parkinson's together. And it starts with just setting apart some time and establishing the right environment, which in and of itself can be tricky because people living with Parkinson's have a lot to manage. And it is a very difficult thing to live with. And it has a huge impact on the things that we take for granted. And one of the specific things we were trying to really pay attention to in working with the APDA and co-creating with the community, talking to clinical sexologists, is to think through, okay, this is important for everybody, but what are the specific barriers for people living with Parkinson's?
Right. And I think that gets to, it's interesting. We do talk a lot about shame, stigma, and taboo. Now, in our sort of schema, we think of shame, like us at Havas Medical Anthropology, right? Like we think of shame as something you feel internally, like I did it, now I'm ashamed, or I don't want to do it because I'm ashamed. Stigma is something that's sort of externally applied, right? So we stigmatize certain behaviors. Taboo is a cultural prohibition. And I think a lot of times people try and go top down. Our point of view is that doesn't work, right? You really have to start thinking about like gay pride marches, right? It started with people going, I'm not going to be ashamed. I don't care that you're going to cancel the Boston St. Patrick's Day parade or something like that, or you're going to yell at us. Like, we're not ashamed.
It was literally a badge.
Yeah, we are not ashamed that we will wear this, even if
Yes.
you try and stigmatize us, right? And that led to a lessening of stigma, which then leads to a sort of societal acceptance. So to me, I truly believe it starts from the bottom up. So I'm just curious, because you're sort of nodding along as I say this, like, did you guys think of it in that way? Like, what are you trying to address here? Is it societal? Is it individual? Like, where did you think about it in that way? Or
Well, I'm not sure I started thinking. I don't think I knew enough to think about it that way, but I'll tell you our journey of discovery through two kind of stories of working with the community. So when we first started to put this idea and our comps and pre-visualizations of what the idea was going to look like, a little bit of writing to show people what it would sound like in front of the community, we had a couple who are ambassadors for the APDA, and they loved it and they thought it would be very welcomed, and they brought it back to one of their groups, and the group would not talk about it. People would not talk about their intimate relationship in front of other people. But when you get them by themselves, they will open up. Whether they want to be, publicly broadcast or not is another story, but you can get people to talk about it individually or as partners. Very difficult to talk about sex in front of other people in your community. So that was one anecdote that was very enlightening to us. Makes total sense once you hear it, and it's probably obvious. The second thing was talking to a man who has Parkinson's and a long-term loving relationship. And I think they naturally and intuitively practice some of the things and they were extremely helpful in helping us think through the items and the strategies and the activities that we were including, because he has the lived experience and that experience with his partner. So that of course is just foundational to co-creation and building something within a community. And he said that a barrier is how he feels about himself, his own shame. And so I think there is stigma out in the community. It's hard to talk about. Individually, it's probably insecurity and some of that shame, some of that self-doubt, feeling that you cannot necessarily deliver or connect with your partner in ways that your partner started this relationship and the reasons why you found it attractive.
Down,
yeah, which of course the partners would say is not true, and they have said that not true at all. And the success of this and the number of people who have requested these kits has proven that this desire to connect is strong.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think with any project that we do in any category, it's important to think about all of the people who, are going to be impacted by a particular initiative. But with this one specifically, because it literally is the person living with the condition and then, their loved one. But I'm curious from like with the process, like would you speak to, the person living with Parkinson's and then separately speak to like their partner to like get insight? And then were there any challenges like or disconnects in that process? And you kind of touched on one, like what people thought their partner thought of them, and then that wasn't really the reality, or like did you find, was there any hesitancy speaking about things together versus separately in one relationship?
It's interesting. We never spoke to partners in relationships separately, always
Got it.
together.
Okay.
And
Okay.
maybe some of the people we spoke to self-selected to speak to us because they were comfortable with it. But they were all very open in this dynamic about having to navigate their relationship in light of, managing Parkinson's disease. The same dynamics frequently, they came up that, this idea of, insecurity, shame,
Mhm.
questioning, what they would be able to do. And on the partner side, you know, complete acceptance, telling them that it's not the case, that there's nothing to worry about, that they just want to, have this health and well-being in their relationship. And when we were creating this, we worked with professionals, and one of them, a clinical sexologist who specializes in partners with Parkinson, talked a lot about learning how to do what you can do and learning what sex and intimacy means now, which may not be what it used to be, but probably when you cross that bridge, it is going to be good and it's going to add that wellness and that joy into your life that is so important.
Did anyone talk about it as an opportunity to actually deepen the relationship? And I'll come back to that question, but I'll give you the basis for why. When I lived in San Francisco, which was back in the 90s, Dan Savage wasn't quite as well known as he is today, but that was when he had a column. He's since changed the name. I won't say it. He would get challenges from a lot of people. First of all, he's hysterical, and occasionally he's inappropriate, but like he is a very funny writer. And he had bought Ann Landers' desk and his tagline, because not every question is appropriate for every columnist, he was a sex advice columnist. And people would write in pretty regularly going, what does a gay man have to add to a heterosexual couple, for example? And I remember him writing a really good piece that has always stuck with me. He said, he felt like gay men and women were actually better suited than anyone to talk about sex, because for them, they had to talk about it. If you're heterosexual, the sort of biology, you never have to talk about it. You just sort of like do it. I'm trying to be like PG on this thing, right? So he literally said like tab A and slot B, and then away you go. And people often end up never really talking beyond that as heterosexual couples. He goes, gay couples have to talk about what limits we have, what we want to do, where we connect, where we don't. And it's really not about the parts, it's about the process. And that for many gay people, they have to really start there with the process of what do I want out of this? And many heterosexual people don't.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know every heterosexual person, but I remember at the time, and I was in my sort of mid-20s, that resonated strongly with me, that I had never really had a lot of those very deep discussions with any partners I'd ever had, because we all sort of assumed that we were like working off the same page. I think there's almost paradoxically this idea that when you as a couple face obstacles and work through them, you've had a chance to actually deepen your relationship. Did that come up at all?
It did. And the whole purpose of this is to deepen the relationship, strengthen the connection. I mentioned that the starting point was setting aside special time together, turn off your cell phones, find some part of the day, in this complicated life where you're managing symptoms on top of everything else. The second part is to talk about what you want to get out of this, to talk about what it is that you're looking forward to in some of the practices that we established throughout the book, and coming to some kind of agreement or moving in the same direction together is extremely important, because you're navigating new territory, you are trying to accomplish something together. And one of the things that's beautiful about that is that this connection, the deepening the connection, begins before you even start deepening the connection, through this conversation about where this is headed, and establishing the things that you're interested in doing together.
Amazing.
Yeah, I love that. What did anything surprise you that you weren't expecting with this project?
There were a lot of surprises.
Yeah.
There were, so, working with the American Parkinson Disease Association, and a great reputation, a bit of an authority, we had to make sure that everything we said was accurate and true. There are certain things about how Parkinson works, and the hormones that are deficient or can help. We had to make sure that we were accurate about what we were saying, and some of the things that we wanted to say, some of the things that that are triggered through intimacy and contact, like dopamine.
Yeah.
Dopamine is a really big part of the deficit in Parkinson's and the therapy to reduce symptoms. These are things that probably impact what's going on, but that science isn't there yet. So we had to step back from that and make this about what we know, not what we can conjecture. So that was one thing, that learning process, and we do that a lot in our business. We
do,
want to
yeah.
make sure that we're accurate and truthful and helpful. Another thing that surprised me was the sheer acceptance of this. I figured, after talking to several couples and talking to the clinical sexologist, that this was a real need, and there were going to be some people who were craving this, open to this, willing to journey together. But the number of people, the demand for this was completely unexpected. We sold out the first printing in less than 24 hours after it launched on Valentine's Day. We had several hundred people on a wait list. There was a second printing that went, and the APDA is printing several hundred more of these kits. They're available free on the American Parkinson Disease Association website.
Those of you who are listening, you should see the smile on Howard's face. He's like beaming from ear to ear. Like, is this the most satisfying thing you've done in your career?
Well, we often use this phrase, we want to do well by doing good.
Yeah.
And this is a good example. This was very welcomed in the community. There's a lot of satisfaction in that. And the fact that it was successful, obviously we want our work to be successful.
Where can people, I think you were just mentioning, but where can people access this or see what it's all about, the kit?
The website is apdaparkinson.org/ParkinSex.
Okay, we'll definitely put that in the description as well, but I just wanted to give everyone the opportunity to check it out, because I mean that's hugely successful.
It is gratifying, to be part of an industry that's dealing with so many things. I think a lot of what's most public about what we do, my kids, even though they're now in their 20s and late teens, sort of tell their friends, like, I sell drugs, right? But I have to explain to people, like, I don't make the ads. I do a lot more than that. And something like this is like really quite gratifying, because healthcare is a large endeavor. We all get sick. We all have frailty. We all get older. Some of what you were describing also describes what couples go through when they have their first child and you have a newborn at home. And it's like, you have to start scheduling things, or you have to start thinking about stressors, or bodies have changed, sleep patterns have changed, just everything changes, and as you get older and you become more frail, like, there's no getting around the fact that a 56-year-old body is not a 26-year-old body, kind of things. Like, I think I think as a society, silence around sex, shame and stigma and all that stuff really prevents an open dialogue, or at least doesn't prevent it for a lot of people, but it certainly doesn't encourage it, you know? And I think works like this sort of really do point medicine back in the direction that it's more than just fixing a car. Like our bodies are sort of made of flesh and bone, but they're in service of us as people. And it's the larger health of the patient that I think we have to put back into view, which is a little harder to measure, but it's still incredibly important. So I just want to thank you guys for doing this work, because it isn't just, I mean, it is just for the Parkinson's community, don't get me wrong, but this type of work, I think, adds back into medicine what has been progressively lost as we get better and better at treating the physical ailments, right? But we get more and more distant from thinking of the physical realities as part of what should be treated. We should be treating the family for ADHD. We should be treating the family or the partner for Parkinson. So I just want to thank you guys for doing the work. It's great.
Thank you very much. Very appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's been very gratifying working with the APDA and their community, and we hope we are doing right by them.
Just wanted to know if you were able to share in any capacity, maybe what's like next for this project, what's on the horizon for continuing on this work.
Sure. We're continuing to help the APDA build their community and create awareness. Projects that I can't talk about, TBD, but we have just launched a ParkinSex the game. So if love is a game, this is how you play. And it's a card game. And it's a very simple exercise in breaking the ice. If it is difficult to get started, if the ParkinSex kit and the strategies that it offers are a bridge too far to that connection, then ParkinSex the game is a very simple way to break the ice. And that is what we're currently working on.
Again, if you could see Howard's face, he's smiling from ear to ear. This is clearly incredibly motivating for him, and I can understand why. I mean, it's rare that we get a chance to have that big an impact on people's lives. You know, I feel like not only are you contributing to individual health, but marital health and all the rest of it. I did look through the book. It is really interesting. It is, you know, it's, even if you don't have Parkinson's, there's a lot in there that you can take away if you're in a long-term relationship. Again, don't order it if you don't have Parkinson's, because there's only a limited supply. but if there are, you know, if electronic versions as well, we'll put some of that in the liner notes.
The book is available as a PDF for download at the same site, and there is a video that goes through the entire thing that is accessible to everyone.
That's great.
That's amazing.
All right. So Howard, any last thoughts?
I'll give a plug for the APDA and their Parkinson Month theme of living better together. I think it's really nice. They're raising awareness for Parkinson's, as they always do, and talking about the importance of connection and community. So just a shout out to the APDA and the wonderful things that they're doing.
Shout out to the APDA. All right. And with that, I'm Brad Davidson.
I'm Sonika Garcia.
And we're here with Howard Lenn, and this is Breaking the Code.
Thank you so much, Howard. Till next time, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Breaking the Code is a podcast created and produced by Havas Health Plus Medical Anthropology Department. Hosted by Brad Davidson and Sonika Garcia. Content and post-production audio editing done by Gabriel Allen Cummings. And inspiration from all of you. Thank you for listening and for your continued support. If you enjoy these episodes, we would love to hear from you. Please leave a rating, subscribe, and send us a message to our mailbox at medicalanthropology@havas.com. Until next time.